The town of Dry Creek appeared on the horizon like a set of broken teeth. Eleanor Blackwood didn't want to stop, but her mare needed water, and she was down to her last few coins. 3 months on the run had taught her that comfort was a memory and hope was a dangerous luxury. She'd left Boston in disgrace, a high society scandal whispered from drawing room to drawing room. Her father had cast her out for refusing to marry a man who saw her as property. Now she was just a woman alone in a place that ate women like her for breakfast. She dismounted by the water trough, feeling the eyes of the town on her, a woman in men's clothes, a pistol at her hip. It was a story they thought they knew. "That's her," someone whispered from the general store porch. "The one from back east. Heard she shamed her whole family." Eleanor ignored them. She'd learned to wear their whispers like armor. Their words couldn't hurt her, not anymore. But then the saloon doors swung open, spilling a group of drunk cowboys into the morning sun. One of them, a big man with a greasy beard, saw her and grinned. "Well, well," he slurred, stumbling toward her. "What's a pretty little thing like you doing all alone?" Her hand went to her gun. It was a familiar dance, but drawing her weapon would only bring more trouble. Before she could decide, a quiet voice cut through the air. "I suggest you gentlemen move along." She turned. A man leaned against the saloon doorframe. He was tall and lean, with eyes as gray as a winter storm, and a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. He looked like he'd seen the worst parts of the world and hadn't bothered to look away. The drunk cowboy, Jake, just laughed. "And who are you? Her keeper?" "No," the stranger said, his voice calm and steady. "But I reckon she's not yours either." The air grew thick. Hands drifted toward gun belts. Eleanor had seen this 100 times. A spark was about to become a fire. Jake took another step. His pride stung. And that's when the stranger moved. He didn't draw. He just shifted, placing himself between Eleanor and the cowboys. "The lady's watering her horse," he said. "Seems simple enough." Jake threw a sloppy punch. The stranger sidestepped, using the man's own momentum to send him crashing into the water trough. Jake came up sputtering, soaked and furious. His hand went for his gun, but the stranger was faster. He didn't draw his own weapon. He just grabbed Jake's wrist, twisted, and the gun dropped into the mud. The other cowboys spread out, ready for a fight. The morning had turned deadly. Then Jake's eyes locked on Eleanor, and a nasty recognition dawned on his face. "I know you," he spat. "You're that Blackwood woman. Heard all about you. Brought shame on your family. You're no better than a—" The stranger's fist connected with Jake's jaw before he could finish the word. It wasn't a wild swing, just a short, brutal punch that dropped the man back into the mud, out cold. "Anyone else?" the stranger asked, his gray eyes sweeping over the remaining cowboys. They hesitated, then backed away, dragging their unconscious friend with them. "This ain't over," one of them muttered. But for now it was. The stranger turned to her. There was no judgment in his eyes, just a quiet understanding that hit her harder than any insult. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. He just touched the brim of his hat. "Name's Sam McKenna," he said. "You might want to move on from Dry Creek. Those boys hold a grudge. I can take care of myself." A hint of a smile touched his scarred face. "I don't doubt it, but sometimes the smart play is knowing when to fold." He started to walk away, then paused. "I'm heading west. Could use the company if you're so inclined. Safer in numbers." Trust was a currency she no longer had. But there was something in his eyes, a shared loneliness that resonated deep in her bones. "I'll think about it," she said. That night in her room at the boarding house, she cleaned her pistol by the flickering lamplight. She was tired of running, tired of being seen as either prey or a prize. The world was a cage, and she was just looking for a corner to breathe in. A soft knock came at her door. "It's McKenna," a voice said through the wood. "Got something you should know." She opened the door a crack, pistol ready. "Those cowboys," he said quietly. "Heard them talking. They'll be waiting for you on the trail tomorrow." A cold knot formed in her stomach. "Let them come," she said, her voice harder than she felt. His gray eyes studied her. "You're either very brave or very foolish." "Maybe both," she admitted. She took a breath. "That offer to travel together, does it still stand?" First light, he said. I'll be at the stable. After he left, she barred the door. For the first time in months, she didn't feel entirely alone. And that feeling was almost as terrifying as the men waiting to kill her. The sun was just a red gash on the horizon when they rode out of Dry Creek. Sam didn't take the main trail. Instead, he led them through a winding canyon that cut north, a longer route, but a safer one. Just as he'd warned, she could see them in the distance, dark shapes waiting on the main road like buzzards waiting for something to die. They rode in silence for the first hour, the only sound the creak of leather and the soft thud of hooves on dirt. The land was brutal and beautiful, all red rock and jagged edges. You know this country, she said, breaking the silence. Well enough, he replied. Been riding these trails for 15 years. What brought you out here? The question was too personal for the West, where a man's past was his own business. But Sam didn't seem to mind. Same as most, I reckon. Looking for something I couldn't find back where I was. Did you find it? He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the horizon. Found different things than I was looking for. They stopped at midday by a trickle of a spring. He shared his jerky and hard biscuits without a word. She noticed he always sat with his back to a rock wall, his eyes never stopping their slow scan of the terrain. He was a man who lived expecting trouble. Those cowboy, she said. Jake knew my name, knew I was from Boston. News travels fast out here, Sam said. Faster than the people running from it. But stories get twisted. By the time they make the rounds, the truth is buried so deep, you'd need a shovel to find it. She looked at him, wondering what story he was running from. You're not curious. Figure if you want me to know, you'll tell me, he said. If you don't, it's your business. That simple acceptance was a kindness she hadn't known in years. In Boston, her life had been a book for everyone to read and judge. Here, this quiet, scarred man was offering her a blank page. The afternoon heat was a physical weight. The world shimmered. Then as they crested a low ridge, Sam pulled his horse up short. His whole body went tense. Sandstorm, he said, pointing to the south. It was a wall of brown, a mountain of dust and wind rolling toward them at impossible speed. The sight was terrifying and magnificent. There, he pointed to a rocky outcropping a quarter-mile away. There are caves in those rocks. We need to move. Now. They spurred their horses, a desperate race against the storm. The first gusts hit them like 1,000 tiny needles, stinging their skin. The world dissolved into a howling, brown chaos. Sam reached the rocks first, leaping from his horse and grabbing her mare's reins, pulling them both toward a dark slash in the stone. The cave was a sudden, blessed silence. They led the horses deeper inside as the storm hit the entrance with the force of a freight train, turning the outside world into a solid, roaring wall of sand. Well, Eleanor said, her voice sounding strange in the quiet, this is cozy. For the first time, she saw Sam truly smile. It changed his whole face. Beats being out in that, he said. These things can last for days. They settled against the cave wall, the storm raging outside like a caged beast. In the strange intimacy of their shared shelter, the words just came out. I was supposed to marry a man named Harrison Ashford, she said. He owns half of Boston. My father owed him a fortune. The marriage was a business deal. Sam just listened, his gray eyes unreadable in the dim light. I said no, publicly, at our engagement party. Harrison didn't take it well. He tried to force me. I broke his nose with a champagne bottle. A sound escaped Sam, something like a chuckle. Bet that was a sight. My father was ruined. My sisters were sent to live with relatives, and I became the woman who assaulted her fiancé. There was no place for me anymore. So I came west thinking I could start over. She laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. But it seems my reputation followed me. Reputations are like shadows, Sam said quietly. They change shape depending on where the light's coming from. Doesn't make them true. She looked at his profile, the hard lines and the old scar. And what shadows are you running from, Sam McKenna? He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he did, his voice was heavy with a grief so old it had become a part of him. I had a family once, he said. A wife, Mary, a daughter, Rose. She was 6. He paused, and the weight of his unspoken words filled the cave. We had a small ranch in Colorado. The railroad wanted our valley. We wouldn't sell. So they sent men to convince us. His hands clenched into fists. I was in town for supplies. By the time I got back, he didn't have to finish. The horror of it hung between them in the darkness. The men who did it, she whispered. Did you find them? Some of them, his voice was flat, devoid of all emotion. It didn't bring Mary and Rose back. It just added more ghosts to the ones I was already carrying. They sat in the dark, two strangers, bound by the wreckage of their pasts. The storm howled outside, a perfect echo of the storms inside them both. He had shown her his deepest wound, a loss so profound it had carved him into the man he was today. And in that shared darkness, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a very long time. It wasn't hope, not yet. It was just the simple human comfort of not being completely and utterly alone. The storm finally broke at sunset, leaving behind a world remade in sand. The sky was a blaze of impossible colors. We'll camp here tonight, Sam said. They built a small fire in the mouth of the cave. As the stars came out, a glittering blanket across the endless dark, Eleanor felt a strange sense of peace. Thank you, she said, looking into the flames, for listening. We all carry our loads, Sam replied, poking the fire. Sometimes it helps to set them down for a spell. That night, she slept without dreaming of the past. For the first time since leaving Boston, she felt like she might be heading somewhere, instead of just running away. Dawn broke like a raw wound across the desert. Sam was already up, his face grim as he studied the sand around their camp. Visitors, he said. Wolf tracks circled the spot where they'd slept. They had been watched. They broke camp and rode south, into a world scoured clean by the storm. By mid-morning, Sam pulled up short. Riders, he said, his voice low. She heard them a second later, the sound of horses coming fast. 5 men crested a nearby ridge, spreading out as they approached. They weren't cowboys. They were predators. Their leader, a man with a silver-studded gun belt, smiled a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Morning, folks. You seem to be carrying valuables. We're collecting a toll for safe passage. Whose territory would that be? Sam asked, his voice flat. Ours, the man said. And the toll is everything you've got, including the lady's company. Sam tensed beside her. That's not going to happen. 5 against 2, friend, the leader sneered. Those aren't good odds. Good enough, Sam said quietly. Then one of the other men, a younger one, pointed at Eleanor. Boss, that's her. The Blackwood woman from the papers. There's a reward. Her family wants her back. The leader's eyes lit up with greed. Well now, this is our lucky day. It happened in a blur. Eleanor drew her pistol and fired into the sand at the leader's horse, making it rear. The outlaws went for their guns, but Sam was already firing. His first shot knocked a man from his saddle. Her second caught another in the shoulder. The rocks! Sam yelled, spurring his horse. They raced for a nearby outcropping as bullets whizzed past their ears. They dove behind cover, their horses huddling close. 3 left, Sam said, reloading his rifle. They'll try to flank us. The outlaws laid down a hail of fire, chipping away at their stone shelter. McKenna, the leader yelled, give us the woman and you can ride away. Go to hell, Sam yelled back. Last chance. The woman's worth more alive, but dead will do. A cold fury filled Eleanor. Even here, she was just a thing to be bought and sold. I make my own choices, she screamed, and I choose to put a bullet in anyone who tries to take me. The outlaws got desperate. The young one who'd recognized her broke cover, charging them with his guns blazing. Sam's rifle barked once, and the boy went down in a cloud of dust. The remaining 2 opened up with everything they had. The rocks shuddered under the impacts. Then as quickly as it started, the firing stopped. They're running, Sam said. He raised his rifle, but Eleanor put a hand on his arm. Let them go. There's been enough killing. They watched the 2 riders disappear over the ridge, leaving their dead behind. The silence was deafening. We need to move, Sam said. They rode hard for hours. Finally, they stopped in a small hidden valley with a spring. As she splashed water on her face, the reality of what they'd done hit her. That boy was right, Sam said, his voice grim. If your family's offering a reward, every bounty hunter in the territory will be looking for you. I've brought you into my trouble, she said, the weight of it crushing her. I should go on alone. No, Sam said, the word final. We head deeper into the mountains. I know places they'll never find us. Why? She asked, her voice breaking. Why are you doing this? He looked out over the valley, his scarred face unreadable. Maybe I'm just tired of watching the wolves take whatever they want. He turned to her, and for the first time she saw past the hardened survivor to the lonely man underneath. Beside, he added, a ghost of a smile on his lips, you're good in a fight. Not many partners I'd rather have watching my back. Partners. The word hung in the air between them. They were no longer just two strangers sharing a trail. They had fought together, bled together, and as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley, a terrifying thought occurred to her. She was starting to trust him. And in this brutal land, trust was the most dangerous thing of all. They traveled for days, pushing deeper into the wild country. The reward for her capture meant every town was a trap, every stranger a potential threat. They were partners now, bound by shared danger. One night, sitting by the fire, Sam told her about an old Spanish mission, abandoned but defensible, a place to rest, to plan. And after that, she asked, New Mexico, maybe, Arizona. Plenty of places a person can disappear. A person, not two people. The thought was a cold stone in her stomach. As they rode toward the border town of Cedar Ridge for supplies, the tension was a third rider between them. The town felt wrong from the moment they arrived. Too many men with watchful eyes, too many quiet whispers as they passed. They took rooms at the Frontier Inn, and the proprietor warned them to stay clear of the Broken Wheel Saloon. That's where the rough sorts gather, she'd said. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. Around midnight, she heard voices in the alley below her window. Description matches, a man said. A woman with a scarred man. Williams will pay plenty. Williams. The name meant nothing to her, but the threat was real. They knew. She tapped their signal on the wall between their rooms. A moment later, Sam slipped into her room, fully dressed and armed. Bounty hunters, he whispered, looking out the window. There'll be more watching the front. There was no way out, but Sam just nodded toward the roof. They moved like ghosts across the shingles, the town dark and sleeping below them. A shout from the street shattered the silence. They'd been seen. They ran, leaping from one roof to the next as gunfire erupted behind them, splintering the wood at their feet. They dropped into the street and sprinted for the stable, the whole town exploding into chaos. They burst through the doors, saddled their horses with shaking hands, and charged out into a hail of bullets. They rode into the night, not stopping until the horses were ready to drop. This can't go on, Eleanor said, her voice raw with exhaustion and fear. I'm tired of running. What do you want to do? Sam asked, his face grim in the moonlight. I want to stop being the prey, she said, surprising herself with the venom in her voice. My family betrayed me. These men hunt me for gold. I'm tired of being the one who runs. Becoming like them isn't the answer, he said quietly. Then what is? She cried, the despair she'd held back for so long, finally breaking through. Tell me, Sam, because I'm running out of hope. He moved closer, his presence a solid warmth in the cold night. The answer is finding a place they can't reach, building something worth defending. Stop running and start living. Is that even possible? I didn't think so, he said, his voice rough. But lately I've been remembering what it felt like to have something to fight for, besides just staying alive. His words hung in the darkness. She reached out and touched his scarred cheek. He caught her hand, his grip gentle. We should keep moving, he said, but he didn't let go. As dawn broke, they found a place to rest. I need to tell you something, Sam said, his face a mask. That name the bounty hunter mentioned, Williams. His name is Jonathan Williams. He's a territorial judge now, backed by the railroad. He took a breath. He's the man who gave the order to kill my family. The world tilted. The man hunting her was the same man who had destroyed him. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It was his. You still came with me, she whispered, knowing he was involved. Maybe I'm a fool, he said, his gray eyes meeting hers. Or maybe I see a chance for something better than revenge. You're not Mary. I'm not trying to replace what I lost. But you make me remember what it felt like to give a damn about tomorrow. The raw honesty of it stole her breath. I don't know how to do this, she confessed. How to stop running. How to build something. Neither do I, he said. But maybe we can figure it out together. Before she could answer, he stiffened. Below them, in the valley, a dust cloud was rising. 6 riders moving fast, following their trail exactly. Professional trackers, Sam said grimly. Williams must want you bad. Gunno, they mounted their horses and rode, not away, but up, into the high mountains that rose like fortress walls against the sky. They were no longer running. They were choosing their ground. And as they climbed toward the snow-dusted peaks, Eleanor knew this was it. Sanctuary, or a final bloody end. The mountains were a world of pine and granite. For 2 days they climbed, the air growing thin and cold. Sam led them toward a hidden pass he knew, a gateway to a secluded valley. As they pushed through the pass, the land dropped away into a perfect bowl, cupped between the peaks. A stream glittered in the afternoon sun. It was a paradise. But they weren't alone. A thin ribbon of smoke curled up from a grove of trees. Sam pulled his rifle, motioning for her to stay back. They moved down cautiously, using the terrain for cover. It was a small, rough-hewn cabin. An old man sat on the porch, watching their approach as if he'd been expecting them. That's close enough, the old man called out. State your business. Just passing through, Sam replied. The old man squinted, his eyes sharp. Sam McKenna, he said, a slow grin spreading across his wrinkled face. Been a long time. Moses, Sam said, relief in his voice. Didn't expect to find you here. Moses turned his gaze to Eleanor. And you'd be the Blackwood woman half the territory's looking for. Eleanor tensed, but the old man just waved a dismissive hand. Don't you worry. I got no love for the men who hire bounty hunters. Man named Williams drove me up here years ago. Decided I liked the peace and quiet. Inside the warm cabin, Moses poured them coffee. Heard about your family, Sam. Sorry for it. He looked at Eleanor. Storm's coming. A big one. Those trackers won't make it through the pass. You can wait it out here. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She found Sam on the porch, watching the clouds swallow the peaks. The wind carried the first flakes of snow. She sat beside him, pulling a blanket around her shoulders and, without thinking, extending it to cover him too. Tell me about her, she said quietly. Mary. She had hair like sunlight, he said, his voice soft. She could make me laugh when nothing else would. She saw the good in everything. He paused. She was too good for me. He turned to her, his face serious in the growing dark. I see the way you look at the world, always calculating the exits. Mary had that look when I first met her. Took a long time for her to learn to trust again. My father taught me what family loyalty was worth, Eleanor said, the bitterness of familiar taste. And Harris and Ashford taught me what men wanted. They were wrong, Sam said fiercely, both of them. The cold, the fear, the exhaustion all crashed down on her at once. It hurts, she whispered. I'm so tired of being strong. His arm came around her, pulling her close. You don't have to be strong all the time, he said into her hair. Not with me. She let herself cry then, months of unshed tears pouring out in the safety of his arms. He just held her, stroking her hair as the snow began to fall in earnest, curtaining them off from the world. When the tears finally stopped, she didn't move. She just rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. In the quiet of the storm, she felt a peace she thought she'd lost forever. The blizzard raged for 3 days, trapping them in the tiny cabin. It was a strange, peaceful time. Moses told stories of the old days, and Sam taught her how to mend leather and sharpen a knife properly. On the 3rd night, as the storm began to break, they sat by the fire. The trackers would have been forced to turn back. They had a window. There's a place, Sam said slowly. An old Spanish land grant down south. A man could settle there, be left alone for years. A man and a woman? Eleanor asked, her heart pounding. Sam met her eyes. If she was willing. Moses cleared his throat. There's a traveling preacher comes through Cooper's Falls, 2 days south of here. Doesn't ask too many questions. The heat from the fire warmed her cheeks. Is that what you want, Sam? To build something together? I want to stop living for yesterday, he said quietly. Yes, she said, the single word holding everything. Yes to all of it, Moses grinned. About time. You two been dancing around each other like nervous colts. As she prepared for bed that night, Sam caught her hand. Eleanor, he said, his voice serious, this isn't about replacing what I lost. You're not a substitute. You're tomorrow. Neither are you, she whispered back. You're the man who makes me believe in possibilities again. They left the next morning, the world glittering under a blanket of new snow. Moses guided them down a shortcut. At the trail fork, he stopped. He pulled a battered Bible from his saddlebag. Figure I'd say a few words over you, he said gruffly. Not official, but God listens whether there's a church or not. They stood in the snow, hands clasped, as the old mountain man spoke simple words of commitment. The mountains were their only witness. As they rode on, Eleanor felt a lightness she hadn't known was possible. But as evening fell, Sam pulled up, studying the snow. Fresh tracks, he said. 4, maybe 5 riders. Came from the south. A moment later they heard it, the ring of horseshoes on stone. They dove for cover as 5 men rode into view. They were hard men, professional killers, and their leader. Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine as she recognized his face from a wanted poster. Thomas Brennan, Williams's personal enforcer. He was the most feared man in the territory. Brennan and his men rode past, heading up the trail toward Moses's valley. Moses will see them coming, Sam whispered, but his face was tight with worry. They rode through the night, the temperature dropping. They found shelter in an abandoned line shack. As Eleanor tended a graze on Sam's arm, he caught her hand. Today, he said, my reason for fighting has green eyes and shoots better than most men I know. Flattery, Mr. McKenna, she smiled. Truth, Mrs. McKenna, he replied. The title, not yet official but real in every way that mattered, sent a warmth through her. A voice called out from the darkness. Hello, the cabin. It wasn't Brennan. It was one of his men. Mr. Brennan is about 10 minutes behind me. He's not much for talking, but I'm authorized to make you an offer. The woman comes with us, and you ride away. Sam fired a shot through the wall, sending the man diving for cover. Go! He yelled. They kicked out the loose boards in the back wall and plunged into the snowy darkness. Gunfire erupted from all sides. They ran scrambling down a steep bank toward a frozen stream. There's a cave, Sam gasped, behind the waterfall. They squeezed into the dark opening just as Brennan's men reached the stream. They're trapped, someone shouted. Sam led her deeper through a passage so narrow they had to turn sideways. It opened into a larger chamber, lit by a faint, ghostly light from a fissure high above. Brennan! Sam's voice echoed off the stone. This is between Williams and me. Let her go! Can't do that, McKenna. Brennan's voice was chillingly close. A job's a job. They saw a movement at the entrance. The fight was coming to them. They took cover, back to back. The first of Brennan's men entered the chamber. Eleanor's shot dropped him. Then the chamber exploded with gunfire. It was a desperate, close-quarters battle. There were too many. Sam cried out, clutching his side. They were being pushed back, running out of ammunition, running out of time. As Brennan's men closed in for the kill, a new wave of gunfire erupted from the passage behind them. It was Moses. He'd brought friends, a dozen hard-bitten mountain men who had no love for hired guns. The tide turned in an instant. Brennan's men were caught in a crossfire. In the chaos, Brennan himself slipped away, but he left half his men dead or wounded in the cave. Saw them coming, Moses said, grinning. Figured you might need a hand. Sam's wound was clean. He'd live. As dawn broke, they prepared to leave. You two still planning on that wedding? Moses asked. The preacher in Cooper's Falls is expecting you. Sam pulled her aside, his eyes intense despite his pain. Still want to do this? It's not too late to change your mind. She looked at the man who had become her world, who had fought for her, who had shown her a future she never dared to dream of. Try to stop me, she said. He kissed her then, a raw, desperate kiss in front of Moses and his cheering mountain men. They rode out of the mountains, bruised and battered, but alive. They were heading for Cooper's Falls for a preacher and a promise. But Eleanor knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her soul, that their war wasn't over. A man like Brennan didn't just give up, and a man like Williams would never stop until he had what he wanted. The road ahead was still long, and it was paved with blood. The shortcut to Cooper's Falls led them into a box canyon. It was too quiet. The birds were silent. The shot came from the rim rock above, kicking up dust near Sam's head. Suddenly, the canyon erupted with gunfire from both sides. It was a perfect ambush. "Brennan!" Sam yelled, pulling her behind a boulder. "Thought you'd gotten away, did you?" Brennan's voice echoed down. "Judge Williams sends his regards. He's here himself. Wants to see justice done. Personal." Eleanor peered through the gun smoke. On the canyon rim, a well-dressed man sat on a fine horse, watching the slaughter below. Jonathan Williams, the man who had destroyed Sam's past, now here to destroy their future. Moses's mountain men, who had escorted them, were pinned down, taking heavy casualties. "McKenna!" Williams's voice was cold and cultured. "I remember you, the sodbuster who thought his little patch of dirt was worth dying for. How did that work out for your wife and child?" Mary begged so prettily at the end. "And little Rose." Sam came unglued. He burst from cover with a raw scream of rage, firing wildly. Eleanor tackled him, dragging him back behind the rock as a hail of bullets ripped through the air where he'd been standing. "Sam! No!" she cried, holding his face, forcing him to look at her. "That's what he wants. We do this together." Williams laughed. "Miss Blackwood, surrender yourself, and I'll let these men live. You have my word." "Your word is worthless," Sam snarled. They were trapped, outgunned, dying. But then Eleanor saw it. More movement on the far rim. It was Moses. He must have circled around. They weren't alone. "When they hit them," she whispered to Sam, "we rush Williams. He's the head of the snake." "Eleanor, it's suicide." "You said partners," she said, checking her pistol. "This is what that means." He looked at her, at the fierce determination in her eyes, and nodded. Together. The attack came from behind Brennan's men with the force of an avalanche. Moses and his remaining men poured fire down into the ambushers' ranks. "Now!" Sam yelled. They broke cover, running across the open ground straight for Williams. His bodyguards turned, but Sam and Eleanor were firing as they ran. One guard went down, then another. Brennan appeared, raising his pistol toward Eleanor. Sam's shot took him in the shoulder, but the tough enforcer stayed on his feet. Eleanor's shot caught him center mass. He looked down at his chest in surprise, whispered, "Damn," and pitched forward into the dust. Williams was trying to flee. Sam raised his rifle, the kill shot perfectly lined up. Justice for Mary and Rose. "Sam!" Eleanor called out. He hesitated for a single infinite second. Then he lowered his aim. The shot hit Williams in the hip, knocking him from his horse. They stood over him as he writhed on the ground. "Do it!" Williams gasped. "Finish it!" Sam raised the rifle. The canyon held its breath. Then slowly he lowered it. "No," he said, his voice shaking with the effort. "You'll stand trial. You'll face real justice. Mary believed in the law. I'll honor her." The fighting was over. The territorial marshal arrived, summoned by a rider Moses had sent before the fight. They took Williams and the survivors into custody. With so many witnesses, not even his money could save him now. As the sun set, they stood in the silent, bloody canyon. "Is it over?" Eleanor asked. "This part is," Sam said, pulling her close. "We can disappear now. Build that life we talked about." Moses walked up, a grim smile on his face. "Found some papers on Williams. Seems your fiancé, Ashford, choked on a fishbone a few weeks back. Your father's debts died with him. And your father? He's dying. He changed the will. Everything goes to you and your sisters." Boston. She could go back. The thought was empty. "There's nothing for me there," she said. "This is my home now." She looked at Sam, at the man who had walked through hell and chosen mercy. "Where is home?" Moses asked. Eleanor looked at Sam's face, at the future she saw in his eyes. "Wherever we make it," she said. They rode out of that canyon of death, leaving the ghosts behind. Ahead of them was Cooper's Falls, a preacher, and the hard, beautiful, uncertain work of building a life from the ashes. They were battered, but not broken. They were scarred, but they were free. The valley was a sliver of green and gold tucked away in the southern mountains. Their land. After the wedding in Cooper's Falls, a simple ceremony, with Moses as their witness, they had traveled for 2 weeks to reach it. "We'll build here," Sam said, pointing to a spot by the creek, high enough to avoid the floods. Over the next months, they worked from sunup to sundown. The cabin rose sturdy and true. They were building more than a home. They were building a life. One day a family appeared, the Morales, fleeing troubles in Mexico. They had 3 small children and nothing but the clothes on their backs. Eleanor and Sam didn't hesitate. They offered them work, land, a place to start over. Their small valley began to feel like a community. The seasons turned. A lawyer arrived one day from Boston. "Your father is dead," he announced. He had left her a fortune. He also had a letter from her sisters, Margaret and Catherine. They had never forgiven their father. They missed her. They loved her. Eleanor wept, not for her father, but for the family she thought she had lost forever. "They can visit," she told the lawyer, "but I'm not going back." Fall brought a letter from Moses. Williams had been tried, convicted, and hanged. The ghosts were finally at rest. Then came the winter, and with it, a sickness that took Eleanor every morning. It was Maria Morales who smiled knowingly. "This sickness passes," she said. "In a few months, you will hold the cure in your arms." A child. After so much death, they would bring forth life. Sam crafted a cradle with hands that had known only violence for too long. Eleanor sewed tiny clothes, her heart full of a terror and a joy so fierce it stole her breath. Spring came, and with it, a daughter. As Maria placed the screaming, perfect child in her arms, Sam knelt by the bed, tears streaming down his scarred face. "What should we call her?" he whispered. Eleanor looked at her husband, at their daughter, at the life they had forged from pain and perseverance. "Hope," she said. "Her name is Hope." That evening, with Hope sleeping at her breast and Sam watching over them both, Eleanor knew she was finally home. She had run from a gilded cage and found freedom in the wild. She had faced down death and found a love stronger than any fear. The West had nearly broken her, but instead it had made her. And in the quiet of their small cabin, surrounded by the family she had chosen, she was no longer the woman who ran. She was the woman who had built a future, one day, one choice, one act of love at a time. The journey was over. The real adventure was just beginning. Thank you, dear listeners, for joining me on this wild journey through the American frontier. Where are you listening to this story from? Please comment below and let's connect across the miles, just as Eleanor and Sam connected across their vast wilderness. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts on their incredible journey. Did their love story touch your heart as it touched mine? Let me know in the comments.